My name is Vanessa Hale, and I'm 32 years old. On paper, I'm a Navy medical assistant stationed in Portland, Oregon. To my family, that title sounds ordinary, like I'm the one who keeps records in order, checks blood pressure, and fills out charts while real heroes do the work. They've never looked past the uniform to wonder if there's more. Maybe they don't want to. At home, I live with my parents, Charles and Margaret Hale, and my younger brother Ethan. Our house looks like every other two-story place in the neighborhood. White siding, a tired porch swing, and a patch of lawn my father trims every Saturday like it's a battlefield he can't afford to lose. Inside, though, the walls are tighter. Not from size, but from words. Ethan has made a sport out of reminding me how little he thinks I matter. He's 26, quick to smirk, quick to point out my flaws, and quick to make me feel smaller than I am. "You're nothing special, Vanessa," he says almost every week. "You patch up scrapes while other people actually serve." My parents never stop him. Sometimes they even smile, like his insults are harmless jokes. It hurts more than I let on. Because the truth, the real truth, is something they've never known. I've carried it like a sealed letter, one I've never let anyone in this house read. Out of sight, out of mind. I tell myself I don't need their approval, but some nights, lying awake, I feel the weight of it pressing down. I've learned to swallow the sting and keep quiet, to breathe through the sharp edge of Ethan's words and the silence of my parents. But silence has a way of breaking. Sometimes all it takes is one crack, one moment, one push. And that push was closer than I realized. It was one of those weekends when my parents decided we needed to do something together. Charles called it family bonding, but in truth, it was always more about appearances, something to post online, a snapshot of happiness to prove we were normal. That Saturday, we drove out to Lake Tahoe. The air smelled sharp with pine, and the water stretched like a sheet of glass under the afternoon sun. Families set up grills, kids ran with frisbees, and boats hummed softly in the distance. To anyone else, it was a perfect day. I stood at the edge of the dock, watching the light scatter across the water. I loved moments like that, quiet, still, where the noise in my head could finally settle. My Navy training had taught me to read water the way some people read books, the pull of the current, the depth, the temperature. To me, the lake wasn't just pretty, it was alive. Behind me, I heard Ethan's laugh, sharp and careless. "What's the matter, Vanessa?" he called. "Scared you'll get your hair wet?" I didn't turn. "Not today, Ethan. Just enjoy the view." But he wasn't interested in enjoying anything. I felt his shadow fall beside mine, closer, heavier. Before I could move, his hands shoved hard into my back. The world tilted. Sky and water traded places, and I went over the edge. The lake swallowed me in a single, cold gulp. Above, I heard laughter, Ethan's ringing out, and then my parents' voices, not panicked, not worried, but almost amused. "It's just a joke," my mother said. "She'll come up," my father added, as if I were part of some cheap trick. But they didn't know. They didn't know the weight of that moment, or the truth I carried under the surface. Because this wasn't a joke. Not to me. The shock of the water hit me like a wall. Cold needles stabbed every inch of my skin, and for a heartbeat, instinct told me to thrash, to panic. But then training, discipline, years of drills, surged to the surface of my mind like muscle memory. I stilled. I breathed out slowly, bubbles slipping from my lips. I opened my eyes. Under the surface, the world was quiet, muted, green, endless. My body knew what to do long before my mind caught up. I stretched out, streamlined, kicking with precision, slicing through the lake like it was built for me. My family thought I was just a medical assistant, a paper pusher in uniform. What they never knew, what I had never told them, was that I was a gold medalist swimmer for the U.S. Navy. I'd spent years perfecting every stroke, every dive, every ounce of endurance until water became as natural as air. And now that secret was saving my life. I swam deeper, away from the shadows above, away from Ethan's laughter and my parents' indifference. My lungs burned, but I welcomed the fire. It reminded me I was alive. It reminded me I was strong. When I finally broke the surface, it wasn't near the dock. It was on the far side of the cove, hidden by trees. No one saw me. Not Ethan. Not my parents. They probably thought I was gone. Maybe that was good. Maybe that was what I needed. I pulled myself onto the rocks, dripping, breathless, my heart hammering against my ribs. For the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel mocked. I felt powerful. I looked back across the water. I could just make out their silhouettes. 3 figures standing together, waiting, laughing, pretending this was harmless. A chill ran through me, and it wasn't from the lake. That wasn't my family anymore. Not really. So I made a choice. I disappeared. 3 days passed before I went back. I didn't call. I didn't text. I let the silence stretch because I wanted them to feel it. The same silence I had felt in my own home for years. When I finally pushed open the front door, the air inside was thick with tension. My mother, Margaret, gasped, her hand flying to her chest. My father, Charles, froze in his chair. And Ethan's face drained of color like he'd seen a ghost. "You're alive," my mother whispered, as though she wasn't sure whether to be relieved or annoyed. "Of course I'm alive," I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "What did you expect?" My father stood, forcing a weak smile. "It was just a joke, Vanessa. Boys fool around. You know how it is." "A joke?" The word burned in my mouth. "You watched me go under. You didn't move. You didn't even flinch." Ethan spoke then, his voice low, shaky. "I didn't mean." "Didn't mean what?" I cut him off. "Didn't mean to kill me? Because that's what you tried to do." The room fell quiet, the only sound the tick of the old clock on the wall. For a second, I wanted one of them, just one, to tell the truth. To admit it wasn't harmless, that what happened at the lake wasn't a prank but a crime. But they didn't. Instead, my mother shook her head and said softly, "Vanessa, you're overreacting. Family doesn't take family to court." And right there I knew. There was nothing left in this house for me. Not love. Not safety. Not even honesty. I turned toward the stairs, my wet shoes still leaving faint marks on the floor. "Maybe not your kind of family," I said. "But I won't live in a house where my life is a punchline." Their silence followed me like a shadow. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creak of the house I no longer felt was mine. My parents' words echoed in my head. It was just a joke. Family doesn't take family to court. But I wasn't a child anymore. I was a 32-year-old woman who had served her country, who had earned every stripe and medal, and who had nearly been drowned by her own brother while her parents watched. A joke doesn't steal your breath. A joke doesn't bury you underwater. By morning, my decision was clear. I walked into the Portland Police Department, my uniform pressed, my heart steady. At the front desk, I asked for Officer Daniel Ruiz, a name I'd been given by a colleague who trusted him. When he arrived, he looked at me curiously. "How can I help you, ma'am?" I drew in a breath and said the words that sealed everything. "My name is Vanessa Hale. 3 days ago, my brother attempted to kill me." The report took hours. Ruiz asked questions gently but firmly, details about the lake, the shove, my parents' reaction. I answered every one, my voice steady even when my hands trembled. When it was over, he closed his notebook and nodded. "You did the right thing," he said. That night, when I returned to the house, the storm broke. Margaret cried. Charles begged. Ethan sulked in the corner. "You can't do this," my mother pleaded. "Vanessa, it will destroy our family." I met her eyes, calm and unshaken. "You destroyed this family the moment you called it a joke." I grabbed my bag, already packed, and walked to the door. Their voices chased me, sharp, desperate, but I didn't turn back. For the first time in my life, I felt free, and terrified, and certain. I had chosen truth over blood. The courthouse smelled of old wood and dust, the kind of place where lives are dismantled and rebuilt with a gavel. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside my attorney, Samuel Brooks, my uniform collar sharp against my neck. Across the room, Ethan slouched in his chair, pale and restless. My parents sat behind him, their faces tight, their eyes avoiding mine. The bailiff called the room to order, and the case began. Ethan's lawyer, Karen Doyle, stood first. She painted a picture of a harmless prank gone wrong, a brother's foolish shove, never meant to harm. "He didn't know she'd take it this seriously," she said, her voice smooth, rehearsed. "It was nothing more than horseplay." Horseplay. The word made bile rise in my throat. Then Samuel rose. Calm, deliberate, he adjusted his tie and spoke. "Ladies and gentlemen, my client, Petty Officer Vanessa Hale, is not here because of horseplay. She is here because her brother deliberately pushed her into dangerous waters with full knowledge of her inability, so he thought, to survive. That, Your Honor, is attempted murder. Doyle scoffed. With respect, she's a Navy medical assistant. She's trained to handle emergencies. Surely she was never in real danger. Samuel smiled faintly, like he had been waiting for this. He turned toward me. Petty Officer Hale, please tell the court about your service record. I swallowed, my palms damp, but my voice steady. I enlisted at 20. Yes, my title is medical assistant, but that's not the whole story. I competed in Navy competitions. I trained as an elite swimmer. 3 years ago, I earned a gold medal for the United States Navy in international waters competitions. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. I caught my parents' eyes, shock frozen across their faces, as if they were meeting me for the first time. Ethan blinked rapidly, disbelief flashing into panic. I continued, my voice firmer now. That day at Lake Tahoe, my brother thought I'd sink. He thought he'd finally silence me. What he didn't know was that water has always been my strength, not my weakness. The room went still. Even the judge leaned forward. Pen paused in midair. For the first time in my life, the truth of who I was filled the room, undeniable. And for the first time, my family couldn't laugh it away. The silence in the courtroom was so heavy it pressed on my chest. Judge Harper Collins adjusted her glasses, eyes sharp as they swept across the room. For a moment, I thought she might speak right then, but she let the weight of my words settle like stones. When she finally spoke, her voice cut through the air like steel. This was no prank. This was a calculated, life-threatening act against a decorated Navy officer. The court does not excuse attempted murder under the label of family horseplay. Ethan shifted, his lawyer whispering frantically, but the judge raised her hand to silence them. Ethan Hale, this court finds you guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. You are hereby sentenced to 18 years in state prison. The words rang in my ears. 18 years. My brother's head dropped, shoulders caving inward. For the first time, I saw fear replace arrogance on his face. Judge Collins wasn't finished. She turned her gaze toward my parents. My mother clutched my father's hand, both pale as parchment. Margaret and Charles Hale, this court finds you guilty of accessory after the fact and criminal negligence. By dismissing and minimizing the act, you enabled a crime and endangered your daughter's life. You are sentenced to 2 years probation, mandatory community service, and fines totaling $15,000. Gasps fluttered across the courtroom. My mother whimpered. My father swallowed hard, his jaw tight. The gavel struck. Bang. Bang. It was over. I sat there, hands folded in my lap, feeling the tremor of justice roll through me. Not joy. Not triumph. Something heavier, quieter. For years I had been the invisible one, the quiet daughter, the underestimated sister. Today the truth stood in the open, undeniable. As the bailiffs led Ethan away in cuffs, he glanced back at me, eyes blazing with something between hatred and regret. I didn't look away. For once, he was the one shrinking under my gaze. Justice had spoken. A week after the verdict, I stood in the doorway of a new apartment in downtown Portland. It wasn't much, just 2 rooms, a small balcony, and walls bare except for sunlight, but it was mine. For the first time in years, the air felt light. I set a single box on the counter. Inside, tucked between folded uniforms and a few photos, was the medal that had saved me, the proof of who I was beyond what my family had ever seen. I placed it on the shelf above the window, where the evening sun could catch its shine. Outside, the city buzzed, cars humming, voices carrying, life moving forward. For so long, I had been weighed down by their words, their dismissal, their laughter. But here, in this quiet space, I felt something I hadn't in a long time, freedom. I thought of Ethan in his cell, my parents under probation. I thought of the courtroom, the gavel, the moment everything shifted. There was no satisfaction in their punishment, only closure. The real victory was mine alone. I stepped out onto the balcony, the wind cool against my face, and spoke words I knew weren't just for me, but for anyone who had ever been told they weren't enough. My greatest victory was never over their hatred, it was over my own doubt. Hard work never sinks. For the first time, I truly believed it. I never thought my own family would become the ones I had to fight against, but life taught me that survival sometimes means letting go of blood ties and holding on to your own worth. My name is Vanessa Hale, and this was my story, a story of betrayal, survival, and justice. Remember, revenge doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's as quiet as walking away and building a new life. And now I ask you, if you were in my place, would you forgive your family, or would you choose justice?